Good morning.
Morning.
Seventh session of the Faculty Development Program organized by East Wing, Directorate of Distance Education, Annamalai University, is going to be commenced now. We are happy to welcome Professor Suresh, formerly Professor and Head, Department of Psychology, Annamalai University, who is going to handle the session. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Professor has held a number of positions and ranks. It is Professor Psychology Wing, Directorate of Distance Education, Annamalai University, Professor and Head, Department of Psychology, Annamalai University, Director, Center for Yoga Studies, Annamalai University, UGC Visiting Professor, Department of Business Administration, Annamalai University, and Honorary Professor, Center for Yoga Studies, Annamalai University. Presently, Professor has been the Course Director, Care Institute of Behavioral Science, Chennai, and Honorary Professor, Department of Psychology, Annamalai University. He has been awarded a number of awards, including Psychometric Educational Award by GCC School of Creative Intelligence and Research Foundation, Distinguished Teacher Award by Annamalai University. And apart from that, he is holding a number of membership in academic forums, including Indian Academy of Applied Psychology, British Psychological Society, and the International Neuropsychological Society. He has guided a number of scholars and published innumerable articles in national and international journals. Apart from this, he has authored books as well as chapters in books. He has delivered a number of lectures in conferences, workshops, etc., etc. He has contributed chapters in books also. He has delivered talks in radio, including on the topic the need for values in life in the All India Radio Pondicherry in the year 2020. And apart from that, on the topic of commitment and responsibility in the All India Radio Pondicherry in the year 2013. I now again welcome Professor Suresh, formerly Professor and Head, Department of Psychology, Annamalai University, to handle the session. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Sir, now you can share the screen, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Good morning, friends. I'm happy to meet you all during this session, and I'll be talking on understanding and managing young minds. And this topic I preferred because this is a challenge for teachers in colleges and universities. Some students may come to the course out of interest. There may be certain other students who may join the course because they have no idea about any other course. There may be some other students who may join the course because they did not get admission in the course they preferred. So as a result, their motivation, their perception of the course, their involvement in the course will differ. But at the same time,
Sorry, you can give slideshow, sir. Slideshow, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So, managing young students in colleges has been a challenge to the teachers. And I've seen many of my colleagues saying that the generation is irresponsible, etc. But I would say that it is not true. To a large extent, it depends on the teachers also. So that way, I've also heard my colleagues in the Department of History saying that, like the students in science stream, they have no control over their students, and as a result, they are unable to do justice for their job in the department. But having control over the students doesn't mean you threaten them with marks in the examination, with internal marks, etc. That is not the case. having control should come out of your relationship with the students, not by threatening them, not by controlling them due to the threat, etc. That should not be the case. And that depends on not only our quality of teaching, but also our quality of interaction with the students. So as a result, when I say the quality of interaction with the students, the interaction between the student and the teacher is a relationship. It is not a contract that the student is there for one semester and then he gets completed and then he goes out and there is no connection between you and him. That is not the case. Even after completing the course from your institution, when he goes out, throughout his life, he should be able to come back to you for any assistance for his growth, and you should be able to provide him that. That is what I mean by relationship with the student. And that is where managing these young people is challenging, true, but it can be managed only by understanding their nature, not by blindly believing that you threaten them, you control them, etc. That is not the case. Right. Now, what are the level of students who are there in your classes? The students would be anywhere between 17 and 22 from the beginning of undergraduate course to the end of the postgraduate course. And as a result, when you see the age range, it is from adolescence to the stage of youth. And when they complete the school and then come to the college, students come with an attitude that, well, in college, I will not be controlled, so I can do whatever I want to. And when they see that they are being controlled, they don't appreciate that. So as a result, adolescence is a stage which is difficult, which is challenging in dealing with them, not only to teachers, but also to parents. I've heard many parents saying that, well, my son is not like before. He has been spoiled by his friend's group. So I'll bring him. Why don't you counsel him? Counseling him is not manipulating somebody to bring him to your way. That is not the case. Counseling is to identify the problem and help him to overcome the problem and grow in a healthy way. That's what it means. So when I talk about the adolescents, their characteristics, etc., now it would be useful to you not only as a teacher, but also as a parent, because you may have an adolescent son or daughter at home. So as a result, in understanding them and improving your relationship with them also, it can be helpful. Now, when you see young minds, these adolescents, they physically, they are growing now, they have enough strength. So there is an optimum growth of the body. And because of the optimum growth, there is also optimum growth of the brain and other functional systems. That is why in education, we use two terms. One is growth, the other one is development. A growth is one which can be quantified, like the height, the weight, etc., which can be measured. Whereas a development is one which refers to a qualitative aspect. So when a person grows quantitatively, there is a corresponding qualitative change also in the person. So when you say qualitative change, that means he is ready to perform certain types of activities. So when growth and development are optimum, that is what is in educational parlance called as readiness. So when these two are at an optimum level, the student is ready to learn whatever is presented to him. So he is ready at this point of time. So that way, if you see the young minds, they are creative because their thinking has improved. Earlier, they used to think only in abstract terms, whereas now, concrete terms, whereas now they are capable of thinking in an abstract manner. When I say abstract manner, what it implies is that without the presence of an object, they will be able to think, they will be able to form hypotheses, they will be able to test hypotheses, etc. So as a result, their thinking has significantly improved. When the thinking has significantly improved, they think in different directions in novel ways. As a result, they are capable of being more creative. Which means when they are capable of being creative, what it implies is that they need inputs to enhance the capability. So when the input is not there, when that is dampened, and the person is likely to be frustrated. So that is why you can see many adolescents, they are very good in writing poems, very good in sports, very good in painting, drawing, etc. So in various activities, they show interest. And the other next one is idealism. So when you say idealism, they try to be ideal in their approach. See, in practical side, you compromise on certain things. Like for example, when you say telling lies is wrong, an adolescent thinks that at no cost you should tell a lie. Whereas an adult knows that for the benefit of others, there is nothing wrong in telling a lie. So as a result, what happens is the adolescent now is idealistic. He believes that whatever is being preached has to be followed. And when you see that adults don't follow many of them, either he is disillusioned with the adult society, or what happens is he thinks that he can also, as he grows, he can preach one thing, he can practice something else. And as a result, it is a stage of idealism. That is why an adolescent thinks that or perceives that every other adult is wrong, is at fault. So the whole world needs to be changed. That is his outlook at this stage. And the third one is buoyancy. He is bubbling with energy. So he has a lot of energy in him. When he has a lot of energy, if constructive, positive outlet is not given to the energy, if the energy is not used in a proper way for the growth of the individual, then it is likely to be channelized in unhealthy, undesirable ways like antisocial activities, etc. As a result, when your student is not obeying you, when your student is behaving or acting in such a way that he is insulting you, well, he is not born that way. Something is wrong where his energy is not being used properly, where his creativity is not being prompted properly. So that's what it implies. And a spirit of adventure. When you say a spirit of adventure, they want to explore. So they do not want to do the routine things. They want to do things which is challenging, where they can explore, where they can do something different, etc. When that is not the case, again, that contributes to frustration in the adolescents. So these are the characteristics of the young minds now. And let us see now, on the one side, it is a period of increased potential. Their capacity in various aspects has increased. At the same time, it is a period of greater vulnerability also. Now, when you say increased potential, what it implies is that they are capable of doing better things in a better way. And that is what you mean by increased potential. Whereas they have the energy, they have the capacity to think, but they do not have the experience of looking at the practical side. That's why I said they always approach things in an idealistic way. Like when you tell your son or daughter that if you get 98% or 99%, I'll admit you in medicine. Many parents say that. Then the boy or a girl thinks that if I get my marks, I can get into medicine. He blindly believes that. And later on, when he gets the grades and he is unable to get into medicine because the quota and other limitations are there, then he asks the parent, well, you asked me, you will admit me in medicine if I get 98, whereas I've got 99. Why is it that you are unable to do that? Then the parent tries to justify, saying that, well, there is a reservation, there is a quota, this, that, etc. Why didn't you tell me earlier? That means you cheated me. That is how he looks at it. So he's idealistic. The practical side, he doesn't know. That is what we mean by generation gap. See, younger people may have knowledge, but they do not have idea about the practical side. They don't have an experience. There is a difference between knowledge and experience. Knowledge is when you have the required information, that means you are knowledgeable. When you apply it in real life situation, that is when it becomes experience. Now, an experienced person knows how to apply a knowledge and what the consequences of the knowledge, etc. are. Like for instance, an experience that I encountered was my first appointment was with the distance education department. And that was a time when the distance education was established. So everyone in the higher education level were new for the distance education system. And when we started the psychology program, all the experts on the committee were professors who had their experience in the regular college. So when they planned for the course, the UGC suggested that it should be equivalent to a regular course. So these professors argued that whatever course or whatever paper is there in the regular, the same paper should be there in the distance education also. Accordingly, they framed the course content, where there were the different branches of psychology like social psychology and lifespan psychology, industrial psychology, education psychology, clinical psychology, etc. And when we started the course, when the participants came for the classes, then we found that many of them were already employed and many of them actually were in a particular job. So they joined the course with a particular goal. Like if I'm in an industry, I look for knowledge in HR. If I'm, say, for example, a staff nurse, I look for knowledge in behavioral problems or abnormal behavior, etc. So they feel that certain papers are irrelevant for them, it's a waste. And in due course, we realized that and we modified the course content in accordance with the needs. So the course content should be different for regular as well as corresponding. In a regular, you are preparing youngsters for a career which should be broad-based. Whereas in a distance education, many of the participants are already employed. They come with a specific goal, so it should be more focused to satisfy their requirements in the job. So this we could learn only from experience. The same way, at the beginning, when they started the distance education, what happened was the authorities believed that after the admission of students, we can start preparing the course material because we do not know how many people are going to join. And as a result, they thought that, well, if I admit the student in, let's say, for example, in February, in March, I can send the orders to the expert for preparation of course material. In April, I will be getting the course material. In May, I can get it printed. So in June, I can send the material to the students. This was the plan. But the thing was, the expert is not there to write the course material only for an online university. So he is already employed who has many commitments. So these people planned to get the material in 1 month. It took about 6 months. So like that, it got delayed at every step. And as a result, what happened for certain courses, we send the course material after the examination because that was lack of experience. Whereas now, when we plan a new course or a change in the course, we plan well in advance, at least 1 year in advance, then we are on time. So that is what you mean by experience, because unexpected events may intervene, and that type of an experience adolescents do not have. As a result, they need to be guided. If they are not properly guided, they may go in the wrong path, and as a result, what happens? Well, their life would be ruined. They may adopt wrong methods or wrong habits, etc., like drug addiction, alcoholism, etc. So that is why we call it vulnerable, because they want to be adventurous, true, but adventurous will be in the wrong way. Well, what will happen if I take the drug? What will happen if I take alcohol? Then they become addicted to that. That is where the adult society has to guide them. That's why we say they are vulnerable, because they do not know the consequences of what they are doing. And so the more experienced people have to guide them in the proper way, and where the role of the teacher also comes in. Now, why do these young people behave the way they do? Now, when limit is placed on his independence, he is offended and protests. See, one of the reasons why parents are concerned about their adolescent son or daughter is that he starts protesting. All these years, he did not protest, because when he was a child, he was blindly obedient to the authority figure, especially the parents, because he was completely dependent on them. As a result, he was blindly obedient. Whereas now, he is grown up now. He has started developing adult-like characteristics. Say, for example, in the case of a boy, mush has started, he has started noticing that he's developing a mush. Then he gets a feeling that, well, I'm not a child anymore. I'm an adult. So hereafter, I can act independently. So that type of a feeling comes in, which means he starts realizing the changes occurring in him, and as a result starts feeling that I am not a child anymore. Whereas parents and teachers continue to see him as a child. That is why it can be a confusion also, because he is physically grown up. At some point, the teacher or the parent asks, well, you are grown up like anything, don't you know even this? At other times, they say, no, you cannot do it on your own. Then he gets a feeling, am I a child or am I a grown up individual? So that is where a confusion is likely to occur. So now he wants to be more independent. When someone places a limit on his independence, he is offended. He thinks that, well, I'm a grown-up person, I can manage. You are not trusting me. As a result, I'm not prepared to accept your commands. I do not want you to control me anymore. And as a result, he protests. And it is this protest that worries the parents. Because all these years, he listened to what I said. Now he is protesting, he is quarreling with me, is something wrong. His friend circle has spoiled him. That's what many of the parents complain. And throughout the world, parents are worried when their son or daughter in the adolescent stage, thinking that something is seriously wrong with him or her. Like, if you are worried about your adolescent son or daughter today, your parents were worried about you when you were in the adolescence, and their parents were worried when they were in the adolescent stage. It is a universal phenomenon from one generation to the other. But for the parents, they think that, well, it is something is seriously wrong and I'm unable to control. What am I to do? My son or daughter is likely to get spoiled. What am I to do? They start unduly, they get worried about that, which need not be the case. So, in order to establish his independence, he protests. And during this stage, there is a sharpened sense of dignity. He thinks that I am a grown-up individual, so I should not be treated like a child anymore. I should not be criticized, so I should not be put down upon. As a result, when you are critical in front of other people, that hurts him. And immediately he retorts, because you are offending his sense of dignity. That is what is happening here. So you should know that he is a grown-up individual. So when you are critical of him on the one side, whether it is in front of others or not, when you are critical, she or he doesn't appreciate that. Especially when you are critical in front of other people, he gets offended, he or she gets offended and thinks that, well, it is an insult to his dignity, and a negative attitude toward adult society develops. So this is another aspect. The third one, the adults try to limit his freedom by controlling. He tries to limit the rights of adults and expands his own rights. So don't tell me this, you're protesting to expand his freedom. Please understand, because all these years we focus only on the outward behavior. We do not focus on why he or she is doing that. When you understand that and then act accordingly, managing young minds would be easier. And it won't be stressful for you also. Whereas here, it becomes stressful. Why? Because you are looking at only the outward behavior. So when he protests, you take it as an insult and you try to punish him for that, and he protests even more. And ultimately, it becomes a fight between the adult and the adolescent, which should not be the case. So why he is doing that is by protesting whatever you are doing. He tells you, well, this is the boundary. Beyond this boundary, don't cross. Because if you cross, then I lose my freedom, I lose my right. I do not appreciate that. See, any individual, irrespective of age, when you interfere in their freedom, they become adamant, they protest, and they do the opposite of what you are saying. Like, I give you an example. One day, I was having my lunch in a restaurant. And in the next table, a husband and wife and a daughter, not an adolescent, but a child who probably was in her 8 or 9 years. They were having their food. So the girl was eating and the mother kept on saying something. And all of a sudden, after a few minutes, the girl put the plate away and said, no, I'm not going to eat at all. The mother kept pestering. She said, no, I will not eat. She was adamant. Then the father intervened and he also said, initially the girl said, I do not want to eat. Then when the father tried to explain, eat whatever you want, you may not eat all the time. What was happening was the girl was eating only the rice, not the vegetable. The mother kept saying that you keep the vegetable along with the rice and eat. The girl said, I don't like, and I do not like the vegetable. As a result, I do not want to eat. Whereas the mother kept saying that, no, you should eat the vegetable also. Now, what happened was, earlier, the girl was eating at least the rice. Now she said, I'm not going to eat the rice as well as the vegetable. I'm not going to eat at all. You asked me to write both. I eat both. I won't eat both. You do whatever you want. She protests now. Why is the girl protesting? The reason is, I'm not allowed to use my discretion to eat. I should eat what I like. I should be allowed to eat what I like. Whereas you tell me that I should eat only according to your expectation, which actually is not possible. You are interfering in my freedom. That's what it implies. So it interferes with the freedom. So the girl actually stopped eating both. Now the father said, okay, you eat the rice, but you must eat the vegetable also later. The girl agreed. But later what happened was, she just took 1 or 2 pieces of vegetables, ate, and then said, Dad, I don't like it, I do not want to eat this. On seeing this, the mother was happy. She was happy because I am proved right and my husband is proved wrong. So in both ways, she was happy. But in the process, she missed one thing here. What happened was, when the father said, you eat the vegetable, she at least ate 2 pieces of vegetable. Now what happened was, you gave me, you respected me, as a result, I respect you. So I eat. So just because you said I eat 2 pieces, but I don't like. So when I don't like, the father said, okay, you need not eat. Now this is a stage when the child realizes that I am respected. As a result, I should respect others. And accordingly, even if I don't like something, just because my father or my mother is saying, I'll have to do that. That type of a thing has to come. So we need to make compromises. And it doesn't happen. So when we try to control, what happens? The protest becomes even more vehement. That is what is happening. And in many situations, the parents are responsible for the development of negative qualities. The same way when it comes to college, to a certain extent, I would blame the teachers also. So as a result, he limits the rights of adults. And only when day in and day out he has to protest, only then the parent gives his discretion. So the negativism of the adolescent becomes more and more persistent because the parent doesn't realize that he has changed. So he tries to keep on being critical, and as a result, the negative behavior keeps growing day by day, and it becomes persistent in him. He develops a negative attitude toward not only the parents, but toward authority figures, which get reflected on the teachers also when they come to. Develops a feeling that adults are unjust and don't understand him. See, that is where the feeling comes in. He believes that adults are not just, they don't understand me. So when they don't understand me, then I don't care for them. So that type of a feeling comes in. And it is in this type of a situation the problem develops here. Because he sees the whole adult society as unjust. They don't understand. What do you mean by understanding? Important thing here. What you mean by understanding is understand his feelings. Why he behaves that way. Don't look at the outward behavior. Try to look at the reason, address the feeling. Only when you address the feeling, the issue can be resolved. When you don't address the feeling, only when you react to the outward behavior, then ultimately what happens, he becomes more and more negative. Like for example, sometimes what happens, what we teachers do is, when the student protests, we try to punish him. So we make him stand in the class, we make him stand outside, etc. We try to punish him. And then we deliberately, try to reduce the internal marks. And now what happens, already he has a negative attitude. And now when you deliberately do that, thinking that you are using your power to control him, the feeling that my teacher is unjust, my teacher is prejudiced, gets strengthened here. That we need to change here. So that is where he feels that the adults are unjust, they don't understand. Because he feels that the adults don't understand him, he moves closer to his friend circle, the peers. That's why you can see, during the stage of adolescence, the adolescent spends more of the time with the friends outside rather than inside the house. So he goes, spends a major portion of the time, he comes back, the parent criticizes. So when the parent criticizes, the parent thinks that tomorrow he will come early. No, he's going to spend more time with the friends, because anyway, when I get back, I'm going to be scolded. Let me enjoy some more time with my friends. And as a result, he becomes closer to the peers. And keep in mind, if your child, if you are a parent, if your adolescent son or daughter prefers to spend more time outside the home or outside the classroom rather than inside, that means something is wrong inside the classroom or inside the home, which you need to identify and address. Scolding him is not going to alter the situation. So that is where I said in the earlier point, when you say understand him, understand his feelings and address the feeling, don't try to offend his feeling or hurt his feelings. Don't do that. That's why it is said that, because the feelings may be irrelevant for you, but for him, the feelings are relevant. That is why it is said that feelings are facts to the person experiencing them. Like, you may think that seeing the movie is nothing great, but for him, I should not be avoided. The same thing, the mistake that many parents do is, this child gets used to watching, addicted to TV or cable. Now what happens when they are in the +2, the parents cut the cable connection. So when you cut the cable connection, you think that he will not watch TV, and as a result, he will spend more time on his studies, and as a result, he will do his studies well. Not necessarily. You are creating another wrong opportunity for him to go in the wrong way. So what is likely to happen is, he may tell you that, well, there is going to be a group study, so I will go to my friend's place, have a group study and come back, because when there is a group study, we discuss better, we learn better. So you create him an opportunity to tell you a lie. So far, he was truthful. You create him an opportunity to tell him a lie. Later on, when you realize that he tells lies, you blame him, saying that you are telling lies, but you were responsible for him to tell lies. So as a result, cutting the cable connection is an insult to him. Instead, have the cable connection and try to educate him and try to modify him with your understanding, not by your power or authority. So power or authority cannot solve the problem, and that is the reason why he moves closer to the peers. Why does he move closer to the peers? The reason is friends treat him as an equal. Whereas at home, as a parent, you treat him like a child, you don't treat him as an equal. You decide as to what needs to be done. So he doesn't appreciate that. So friends treat him as an equal. Friends give respect to his views. So friends consult him for his ideas, and friends take his ideas also in making a choice. So they do things in a joint way, which is not the case at home. So the same thing in the classroom also. The teacher says, I'm the teacher, do what I say. So naturally the peers come closer together and thinks, well, we should not do what this fellow says. So they join together in protesting against the teacher. And you think that these boys are bad. No, it is your approach that is wrong. See here, who is right, who is wrong, it should be based on the situation, not on the individual. Don't focus on the individual. Focus on the issue. When you focus on the individual, naturally your approach will be wrong and all your actions would also be wrong here. So being closer to the peers and peer influence, peer pressure is predominant during this stage. So as a teacher, don't get offended because of that. Instead, try to understand why he is doing that. And with your supportive approach, you can consult him not by your authoritative or authoritarian approach. So that is where we need to understand the adolescence. Now, keep in mind, what are the characteristics of a healthy abilities? Psychologists believe that each person is endowed with a lot of potentials, not one or two. And Eastern system, Indian philosophical system also believes that each person is born with unlimited potentials. So these potentials, many of them are to be developed so that his functioning becomes more and more effective in nature. So as a result, he must be provided with opportunities to develop as many potentials as possible. When that is blocked, when my ability is not developed, then I become inefficient. So ultimately what happens? Well, I'm frustrated in life, and as a result, I'm unhappy in life also. So once we have to, as a teacher, we need to provide opportunities to develop the ability. What abilities are to be developed? The question, because you may ask a question, sir, you said there is innumerable amount of potential in a person. Then what potentials? So the potentials should be what is needed. You can have a priority. Help him to set for the current situation. For example, if you are a student now, one important thing is you must develop the ability to learn your lessons, to understand your lessons, and then use the lessons whenever there is a need in a real life situation. So as a result, in such a case, as a teacher, you must help him in learning from the book, in understanding and expressing whatever he has learned. On the other hand, when you say, well, do what I say, you take a notes, reproduce exactly as it is given in the notes, then it doesn't develop his ability. It can be, then learning or education becomes really painful, really unpleasant. So that way, set a priority. And the same way, like as teachers, we may also have inadequacies. See, keep in mind, all human beings have inadequacies. You cannot say that there can be a person who has no inadequacies at all. All of us do have inadequacies. When a person says that I don't have inadequacies at all, that means he is a person who has to be admitted in the mental hospital immediately. So all of us do have inadequacies. Why do we have inadequacies? We have the potentials. As we grow, we get opportunities to develop certain abilities, but we don't get opportunities to develop certain other abilities. So where you don't get an opportunity, there the ability is not developed, and that is inadequate. Like for example, if you see in the present day society, if you see many of the teachers, even in the college, are unable to communicate in English. Now, when you see this situation, why is that? Well, it is not that the teacher's brain is inferior. If it was inferior, he would not have learned. Brain is not inferior. I would develop the ability. Acquiring knowledge alone is not enough. It should be used in real life situations. Like, for instance, we were in school. In those days, there were only limited number of students in a classroom. There may be about 10 students or 15 students in a classroom. And so the teacher had enough time to spend with each student. So in the primary or elementary school, when the teacher was teaching an alphabet, he used to write the alphabet on the board and tell the students how it needs to be written. And then he used to go to each student and check how he has written. And then if he had written it properly, he appreciated. If he had written it wrongly, he used to tell him where it is wrong, why it is wrong, and sometimes hold his hand and make him write that also. Now, what happened here is, when you write letter A on the board and say this is A, the student learns, get the information, this letter is called A. So anytime when someone writes the letter on a board and asks what is that, he will be able to say A. But when you ask him to write the letter A, he will not be able to do that. Why? He was never given the practice of writing that. So as a result, he must be given the practice. Now, when he learns the alphabets, then the teacher used to help him teach words and then use the words in sentences, etc. And used to ask the students to construct a sentence with the word. So knowledge and skill went together. So when the student went to a next level, he had the skill in the required skill in communication. Whereas now, what happens is each classroom is overloaded. So the teacher doesn't have time to go to every student and do that. So he asks, have you understood? All students nod the head. Yes. And if you see, it is only the student who has not understood who nod the head first rather than the others. So the teacher says, well, okay, understood, good. My job is over. I go to the next step. So it goes like that. And finally, when it comes to the examination, many of the students commit a mistake. You can't fail all of them. So ultimately, when the point is there, you just give them a mark. And then they pass, go to the next class with the same inadequacy. They keep on going up to completing a college degree. Then when we become a teacher or when we take up a job, we see that we have difficulty here. That's why some companies conduct a program on spoken English when they take a person for a job, which he should have learned while in school itself. So the fault is at the system, not with the individual. And as a result, what happens when you say that just the points are enough, the sentences are secondary, then I learn only the points and write the points. I do not know how to construct a sentence. Whereas when I become a teacher, I need to communicate, construct sentences where I don't have the ability to do that. There is an inadequacy. When such an inadequacy is there, every minute in the class is stressful for me, unpleasant for me, because I have difficulty in communicating and the students would be teasing me, the students would be trying to corner me because they will deliberately ask a question. Well, let us corner this fellow and deliberately ask a question. And when they ask a question, I don't like that. And as a result, I dislike the student who asks a question, etc. It goes like that, it becomes a problem. The problem is because of inadequacy in me. So right now, the priority for me should be, I've taken up a job as a teacher. I need to communicate, which means I must develop the ability to communicate. So the same way, students also help the students. As a teacher, you try to help them. What are the abilities that should come first? What are the abilities that can come later, etc. Don't be critical of not developing an ability. Don't be critical of developing an ability in some other irrelevant thing, etc. Don't be critical about that, because that is also something positive. So a person with a healthy mind is motivated to develop as many abilities as possible. Set a priority. Don't try to do all the things simultaneously. Set a priority as per the need and then develop them. So realizing one's abilities contribute to the development of a healthy mind. The second one, coping with the normal stresses of life. See, life actually poses stresses. It would be stressful. The reason is things keep changing. So changes do occur in the society, and as a result, what happens? Changes within us occur changes outside also occur. So when changes occur, so naturally what happens here is, well, there should be modification also. So when a change occurs and when there is a gap between what I am now and what I'm supposed to do, so when there is a gap between what is there in me, what is, so stress is a perception that the demand exceeds the resources. I'm repeating. Stress is a perception that the demand exceeds one's resources. Perception. That is why stress is subjective in nature. What is stressful for one person is desirable or happy for another person. For example, when a teacher doesn't have a communication skill, being in the classroom is stressful. Whereas for another teacher, when the communication skill is good, every minute in the class he enjoys. As a result, it is the gap. Such a gap can occur due to two reasons. One, if you think that the potential is not there in you, actually if it is not there, then stress is realistic. Or when you don't realize the presence of the potential in you and you believe that it is not there, then again the life situation can be stressful in nature. So stress at every stage is part and parcel of our life. The first thing is we should understand that changes occur in us. When you deny that changes occur in you, that is when you have adjustment problems. And as a result, allow your son or daughter or allow your student to experience the stress. Provide him the support. Don't simplify things for him. Don't try to do it for him. For example, in the school, the student was given a notes. As a result, I studied the notes. I wrote the examination. Whereas when I come to college, I'm supposed to learn on my own. Don't give him a notes. Don't encourage him to learn from the notes. Instead, encourage him to learn from the book and prepare an essay on by himself and then try to correct it and give a feedback to him. So allow him to face the normal. When you face and solve your day-to-day problems, then you become stronger, your mind becomes healthy. Otherwise, you would be afraid of facing problems in the real life situation. So the same situation can be viewed either as a problem or an opportunity. When you see it as a problem, you run away from that. When you see it as an opportunity, you make use of it and you grow. So that is what it implies. And I've seen teachers in colleges, sometimes when the new semester comes, the head of the department organizes a meeting and says, well, what are all the papers that we can allot to each teacher? The teacher says, well, I have been teaching this paper. Why don't we change the paper? Because you have taught the paper for the past 3 years. No, I do not want a change in the paper at all. What it implies is that I do not want to learn anymore. I am comfortable in repeating what I am saying. I do not want to learn anymore and expand my knowledge. That's what it implies. So you must keep changing your papers from time to time. That is when it contributes to your health of your mind rather than feeling safe in the routine, repetitive activity. So one should be helped to face and solve normal life. That makes one psychologically stronger. Then the next characteristic is working productively. When you say work, implies is that I do something in a better way compared to how I used to do earlier. So when I do it in a better way, I may commit mistakes. That's a different thing. We need not be afraid of committing mistakes. Instead, we must learn from mistakes. So failure is not the result of falling down. Failure is the result of staying down. That is, you are not taking effort to overcome your failure. That's what it implies. So when you say productively, I try to learn. You would have been teaching in a particular way and all the students would have appreciated your teaching. But still you can think, how can I do it still better? So that I can be more productive, I can be more positive, I can be more efficient, I can be more effective, etc. That is what we mean by working productively. So when your student has done something well, appreciate him for that, tell him how he can do it still better. Motivate him for that. When a student has not done well, don't be critical. For him also, tell him how he can improve his performance. So that way, there should be a motivation to work more productively. And the next one is the ability to make a contribution to one's community. So when I develop certain characteristics, I need to develop an ability to make a contribution to one's community. What do you mean by a community? What it implies is the other people. Now, as a teacher, you have to contribute to the students' community. So when you say the students' community, what it implies is that students are there to learn from you. So you need to make them learn so that later on they will be able to be productive citizens in the society. So that is how we need to evaluate a person's worth. A person's worth should be evaluated in terms of what he possesses within himself rather than outside possession. Whereas, unfortunately, in the present day world, in a materialistic world, what has happened is we value a person by virtue of his external possessions rather than internal possessions, which was not the case in the as far as the traditional Indian society was concerned. In the traditional Indian society, a person was valued for what he has within himself or herself. That is why in those days, teaching was considered to be a noble profession. Because in those days, there was no computer, there was no internet, etc. And there was no adequate money available also. So the teacher would have compromised on certain needs to acquire the knowledge. So he knows the value of knowledge. And as a result, he derived a pleasure by giving knowledge to others without expecting anything in return. So he wanted others to benefit from his knowledge, and that is why it was considered to be a noble profession. That is why in those days, teachers were respected more than rich businessmen. The same way, a saint was respected more than a king of the nation. Why? Because there were umpteen number of things in the society to tempt you. Many of us get tempted, whereas a saint is a man or a person who is able to control his temptation and lead a life with bare minimum requirement. That is why he is peaceful in his life. So that cannot be achieved so easily. All these things can come only with hard practice. So any behavioral skill can be developed only with practice. So as a result, how we are beneficial to the betterment of other people is important. That is how it has to be evaluated. So for your students, when you say, for example, teach the subject history, because I have seen people saying that, students of history saying that, sir, our subject is a useless subject. It involves only memorization of names and years and nothing else, which actually is not the case. History is such a rich subject. Tell them that you can make a contribution, because the development of anything, any society, any individual has a history. And as a result, say for example, when I am a teacher today, I have a history, where I was born and how I was born, in what background I grew, and what were the difficulties I experienced, how I overcame all of them, etc. How I could become a teacher, and all those things. I have a background there. So make him learn it in a meaningful way. Say, for example, ask your student to learn about why a particular name was given to this village. What is the background in giving the name to the village? What is the history behind the name here? And what were the type of people who were there about 50 years ago in the village? What was the occupation of people in the village, etc. Then I'm able to relate what I'm learning with the actual life situation. And then from that, then he realized that by learning history, I can make a contribution to the society. So then he develops a fascination for the subject and he learns. So that way, these are the characteristics of the healthy mind. And so, as a teacher, help him to develop his abilities. As a teacher, allow him to face the normal stresses of life, but wherever possible, provide a support, but don't do it for him. Don't simplify it for him. Let him learn it in the right way. and make him work in a productive way, in a better way, in a different way, etc., so that everyone benefits. That is what, these are the characteristics of a healthy mind. So as a teacher, whatever you do should contribute to the development of these characteristics in an individual. Otherwise, there will be behavioral problems. Now, coming to the background of the students, the teacher should have a knowledge about the background of the student. Only then you can understand the reason for the problems or for his or her behavior. So when you see the background of the students, well, there are students from the rural area, there are students from the urban area, which means their exposure in the past was different. So the way they were treated were different. Many times you can see rural students having an inferiority complex. And here, when you compare the rural student with an urban student and be critical of him, you will be strengthening the inferiority complex in the rural student. So we must understand why he has certain problems and how he can be supported. The other one, medium of instruction. So when you say medium of instruction, well, it should be one person would have come from the Tamil medium, the other one would have studied in an English medium. When he comes to the college, he has come for a course in an English medium. Now what happens? He has difficulty in adjusting not only with the subject matter, but also with the medium, English medium. So he has difficulty in adjusting to the English medium here. So here again, there is a reason as to why he has difficulty here, where he needs additional support. The next one is economic status. So when you say economic status, some students may be from well-off families, some students may be from poor families. Say, for example, today, when the whole country online classes are being encouraged, on the other side, there are criticisms for that also. Why is that? When you encourage online education, well, in a family where when a student is from a poor family, many computers may not be available or internet may not be available. As a result, those students would be at a disadvantage. Then how can we do that? That is another thing. Then the next one is parental education. When parents are educated, they may value the education of their son or daughter. When the parents are not educated, either they may not value or they may not be able to provide adequate support for the child in his education, which may have a difficulty. Because in my village, when I was young, some students used to come late. Because in those days, many of the villagers send their children to school only for them to learn to read and write, not beyond that. So as a result, what happened was, on the one side, though the student was good in his studies, he didn't do his best, some of them. The reason is that he says, anyway, after 8th standard, I'm not going to study, so I need not strain myself. So though he was capable, he was not working to his maximum potential. And he had to get up in the morning and help his father in cleaning the cattle shed, etc. And as a result, he used to come late to the class. And in the class, the teacher used to scold him without understanding the reason. So on the one side, there, my parent tells me that I should do that, otherwise will not send me to school. Here, my teacher is scolding me. So the only way is to drop out of school. So as a result, the parental background also plays an important role, where the teacher should take into account those aspects. And there are students from other states and countries. Once upon a time, when you go into a class, you would see students only from the local area. And that made the job easier for the teacher, because the problems would be similar. Say, for example, if the students are from within your state or from nearby places, you can teach them in time. Today, if you go into your class, you see an international picture there. There are students from foreign countries, there are students from other states, the rural students, the poor students, etc. So they have their own difficulties. When the students from other states come in here, they do not know the local language. And when they do not know the local language, and some teachers keep talking majority of the time in the local language, well, they are unable to learn. The same way, when they go to the office, the staff in the office, they do not know the language of the student, and he doesn't know how to communicate in English, or the staff in the office doesn't know to understand English also. The student has difficulty, so no one is there to help him. But he is there on the street stranded. The same thing it applies to a foreign student also. So that is where the teacher has to provide a support in those aspects. Your job is not just there only in the classroom, in all possible aspects. When you support him, you will be encouraging or motivating the student to learn better. So the teacher has to provide a support to in every possible way. The same way, there are students who are day scholars, there are students from coming from the hostels, their problem may be more. Say, for example, the students who come from home for the first time to the hostel may experience homesickness, and as a result, they may feel depressed, etc. A support from the teacher or a supportive teacher may help him overcome the issue. The same thing, gender. The problems of boys and girls are different, and as a result, that has to be approached differently. So, the background of the students, the nature of the problem should also be taken into account when we try to see the students here, not just the subject matter and lecturing in the classroom alone. And as a result, when your students come from school to your college to your classroom, there are many things they need to adjust to. There are many adjustment problems to the students. So in every possible way, the teacher has to be supportive in nature. But many times what we do is, my job is only to teach, so I cannot take into account the rest of the aspects. As a result, it's your lookout. That's how we say that should not be the case. So when you say adjustment, what do you mean by adjustment psychologically? When you make an adjustment, you should become a better person. So adjustment is nothing but balancing between needs and responsibilities. You have certain needs. Only when your needs are fulfilled, you can perform your responsibilities properly. For example, only if I have good food, healthy food, only then my body will be healthy. Only if I have sufficient rest, only then I can go to my classroom and listen to the lectures well. So here, the needs and responsibilities, when the balance is not there, when there is an imbalance, that is when adjustment problem comes in. And actually, when you pay more attention to your needs, you become a selfish person, and as a result, you fail in your responsibility. And the same way, when you place more importance to the responsibilities, you compromise on your needs, you end up a frustrated individual. If you are frustrated, then you are incapable of learning the needs of the other people. So balancing between the two, and balancing doesn't mean, well, my classes are only 10 to 4, so after 4 it is for my family, so I'm balancing. That is not the case. It should be setting priorities. So when it is setting priorities, say for example, you have given an assignment to a student and you have given him 1 week's time. A student calls you now, but you are busy in some other activity at home. When he calls you now, then you can tell him, well, contact me in the department tomorrow morning, I'll help you. Whereas if he has to submit the assignment tomorrow, and then what you need to do is you spare some time for him, clarify that so that he learns. That is what you mean by balancing needs and responsibilities. Otherwise, when there is a gap between the two, that is when it needs adjustment. So when you deny reality, when you are not in touch with reality, that is when you have adjustment problems. An ideal example usually I say is when your hair becomes gray. That means you are getting old. So we are getting old. You don't have control over that at all. If you have control, everyone throughout the world will be 16. Whereas you don't have a control over that. But you do not want to accept that you are getting old. So what happens? You sit in front of them. If you have to attend when you have to attend an important function, you sit in front of the mirror and you apply a hair dye. You spend about 1 hour in applying a hair dye. You look at yourself in different angles, and then you are convinced that I look 10 years younger. So you feel you are 40 years old, though you are 50. Now you are denying reality here. You are actually 50, but you do not want to accept that you are 50. So you apply the hair dye and you convince yourself that you are 50. Now you are 40. And then you go to the function with the same proud feeling, sitting there thinking that everyone is going to see you as a 40-year-old person. Whereas when a person sitting next to you asks you, what brand are you using? You look so natural, you are angry at the individual. And why are you angry now? The other person has not made you angry. You deny reality. As a result, you become angry now. And whenever you see the person, you are angry or unpleasant, you try to avoid him. And the person is not responsible for your anger. Your denial of reality is responsible for your anger. On the other hand, when you accept reality, yes, I am getting old, but the gray hair, rather than the gray hair, if it is black, it may appear to be better. So let me use a hair dye. You apply the hair dye. And when the person asks you what brand are you using, you will feel proud about yourself. I have chosen a good brand. I can recommend it to others also. You will be happy and you will go closer to the individual and the relationship will become stronger. So when you deny reality, there are more and more adjustment problems. The same way with the student also, when the students imitate your behavior, inadequacies in your behavior as a teacher, take it as a feedback. Don't try to punish the student, take it as a feedback. When you take it as a feedback, you will try to improve yourself. When you improve, you become a better teacher. Not only that, your relationship with the students will be also be cordial and healthy in nature. So that is where when the student comes in, he comes with different background. As a result, there are a lot of adjustment problems to be made, and as a result, it would be appropriate to help the students in dealing with the adjustment problem also. Now, when the adolescent has to, or when the student has to deal with the issues, dealing with the issues is decided by not by one single factor, by many factors. So there may be one student people and seek help. There may be one person who may be shy in nature, so who may withdraw from people, as a result, who may have difficulty in adjusting, dealing with the problem. Then as a teacher, what you need to do is identify the person who is feeling shy, help him overcome the shyness, encourage him, and then try to provide a support. The same way, psychosocial support from the environment. So when you say psychosocial support from the environment, the parents, the teachers, as well as the friends. Now, as a teacher, you are in the middle. When the student has some difficulty with the parents, try to talk to the parents and help the student deal with the parents. And if it is with the peers, then call the peers and help him to support him in overcoming the problem. The same way, wherever possible, you try to provide the support. So the psychosocial, that is why in the NAC requirement, UGC also has come out, NAC has also come out with many support systems, like student feedback system, mentoring system, etc. So all those things have their own significance where you help them to deal with their problems so that they are able to learn effectively. And the life skills of the student. When you say the life skills, there are different skills like communication skills, problem solving skills, interpersonal skills, etc. So in whichever skill he is lacking, help him to develop those skills, and as a result, he will be able to grow in a healthy way. So that way, there are the influencing factors. So as a teacher, you have your own. See, a teacher plays a variety of roles. See, what happens is all of us in our day-to-day life situation play a wide variety of roles. Like when you are at home, when you are with your parent, your role is a child. When you are with your husband or wife, your role is that of a life partner. When you are with the child, your role is that of a parent. And when you come out, when you get into the bus, your role becomes a fellow passenger. When you get into the classroom, your role is a teacher. You are a teacher only within the classroom or within the department. Don't try to act like a teacher everywhere, even on the road. Like when you see your student in a bus, you are a co-passenger for him. You are not a teacher in the classroom. In the bus. So in which case, where you need to understand the role and play the role accordingly. Like when I was with the distance education, we used to arrange for a hostel for our students. One day the warden came to me saying that, sir, one person is causing difficulty in the hostel, you better talk to him. Then I asked the warden, what is the difficulty? He says, well, this person does not allow us to accommodate other students in the room. He says, well, he has to stay alone. Then I sent word for the student. When he came out of the class, I saw him from a distance. He was an elderly person. He was in his 50s. Then when he came to me, I asked him, what is the problem? He said, sir, they are trying to accommodate some young boys in my room. I cannot do that. I'm a senior executive in my company, so I cannot allow youngsters to be accommodated in my room. Now he acts like a senior executive here. You are a senior executive only within the four walls of your company, not wherever you go. You cannot go to the market and say, I'm a senior executive, so you must give me the vegetables first. Your role is different there. So we play a wide variety of roles. So accordingly, as a teacher, you have different roles to play. And those roles should be played properly. One is that of a parent. So what does a parent do? The parent tries to see the needs of his child. Wherever possible, he tries to help the child fulfill the need. So he provides the support and pays priority also. Say, for example, when you see a mother, she may have two children. One child may be healthy, the other child may have some health problem. And you can see that the mother spends more time for the child who is sick or who is weak and shows more concern to that child rather than the first one. And the first one would say, well, you are prejudiced and you like only him and you don't like me. The mother would say, so no, both of you are my children. I'm not like that at all. But the mother has more concern for the younger one because he needs more support from the mother rather than the elder one. So it doesn't mean the mother does not like the elder one. The mother thinks that, well, he can take care of his needs to a certain extent, whereas he needs more of my support. So as a result, I provide my support. So that is the way you need to approach your students also in a class. So like a parent. So when the student has a difficulty, how would you feel when your child has a problem? Try to look at it from that angle. Be empathetic and to try to provide an appropriate support. When you are in the classroom, provide him knowledge. Don't compromise on that. See, your job is to provide knowledge and also to stop him from any distracting event so that he focuses on your teaching and then he learns. So your quality of teaching plays a very vital role in such a situation. So in the classroom, don't compromise. Don't allow him to do anything else and be impartial with every other student. Tell them that you are here to learn. I cannot make any compromise on that. Whereas for you to learn better, tell me whatever I need to do, I will compromise on those things. So providing knowledge, don't make compromises on that. Don't make things simple for them. Don't give them ready-made notes or question answers, etc. Don't try to give that. Make them learn. Try to see the long-term perspective. Don't try to see the immediate perspective or what is easy for you. Don't try to do that. And I would say only a student who has difficulty in learning in your classroom is going to make you a better teacher rather than an intelligent student. So that way you need to provide more support because one, you are helping a student, the other one, you are helping yourself to become a better teacher. Then the next one, the role of a guide. So when you say a guide, what it implies is that whether it is in research, whether it is in the classroom, a guide only shows the direction. Guide does not do things for him. The guide shows him the direction and provides necessary support for him to learn. So the role of a guide. The role of a friend or a mentor. Who is a mentor? A mentor is a senior person who is experienced and as a result who can help a younger person to make adjustments, to provide guidelines. That's why in your NAC requirement, one of the teachers is made a mentor for a small group of students. What's your role? Your job should be on a daily basis, you must try to interact with the students and then find out their problems, try to help them how they must go about it or how you can help them solve the problem, etc. That is the role of a mentor, but unfortunately, everything in many places remain only in the record. We don't play the role there. So a mentor is a senior person who is more experienced, who can guide a younger person, less experienced person in making better adjustment. The next one, the role of an examiner. When you become an examiner, you should be blind to the student's name or number there. What is there? The content. Because as an examiner, your job is to evaluate and see what he has learned and give a feedback as to what he has not learned. Well, you have answered this well, but these things you have not learned well. So you need to learn well. Don't try to give marks because some student says good morning every time, and whereas some other student does not say good morning. Never do that. And don't try to be partial when you're giving marks to the students. So you will be demotivating students. You will be doing a lifelong injustice for students in general. Never do that. When you are an examiner, see, when you like a student, that is where you should be more strict, because you make him learn when he is under you, so that he will be very successful in your life. Whereas when you give him more marks, he doesn't learn, and he is going to experience difficulty throughout his life. You are doing a lifelong injustice for such a person. So as a result, be impartial when you are an examiner. Every student is equal for you. Make everyone learn. That should be, and give a feedback. When you evaluate the paper, it is not just giving marks. That is where the mistake is. That is why we see examination as stressful. Examination per se is not stressful. Our attitude toward the examination mark is stressful. Like when a person has got 85, you say good. When a person has got 83, you say, well, you have got only 83. It's a humiliating experience. Don't do that. For every student, give a feedback. What you mean by a feedback is everything can have a positive side, can have a negative side. For example, a student who has written for 20 pages, handwriting is beautiful, but that is not even a single point in his paper. You give a 0 mark. But don't tell him that everything is nonsense. Tell him, see, your handwriting is so beautiful. I envy your handwriting because my handwriting is not like yours. So for such a beautiful handwriting, if you learn a little bit, you can score good marks. Try to appreciate him. There may be another student, handwriting may be bad, but he would have filled up 20 pages. The whole thing may be nonsense, but he has filled up 20 pages. Tell him, see, you have the capacity to fill up 20 pages. I am unable to do even for 5 pages, but try to do it in a meaningful way. How it can be done in a meaningful way? So try to look at positive things in everything, appreciate the positive, and then provide the negative. Tell him what is expected of that. Then he knows what he needs to learn, where he needs to improve, etc. So that is where, then when you do that, every student will say, sir, every day let us have a test, or when we complete every chapter, well, we will have a test. The students will come and ask for an examination rather than running away from the examination. So that way, that is how you need to manage young minds. When you manage young minds, understand your role, play the role properly, then you will be able to help them do things in a better way. And coming to the last aspect, certain suggestions to manage the young minds. One, encourage contact between you and your students. Encourage them to contact you as frequently as possible. Whenever there is a need, try to interact with them either formally or informally, etc. Your student should not be running away from you. Your student should not be afraid of you. Sometimes some of the teachers, what we do is, when the students are afraid of us, we feel great. No, that should not be. They should not be afraid. They should respect you. Fear is not respect. Well, when the student stands before you with folded hands, don't think that is respect. You have probably created a fear in him. The respect should be there in the heart, not outside behavior. What is there in the heart can come outside, not something else. So encourage contact, encourage interaction with you. Then develop reciprocity and cooperation among students. So never create competition among the students. Competition actually divides people and ultimately leads to many adjustment problems. So when, say, for example, one student is good in his studies, there is another student is poor in his studies, then call the student who is good and ask him to help him in his studies, etc. And try to monitor that also, whether he is doing that. So when you do that, and when a student helps me in learning, then I'll be waiting for an opportunity to help him, and as a result, the relationship will get strengthened, and as a result, there will be a cooperative effort, what is needed in the present day society. So never encourage cutthroat competition. There should be encourage cooperative learning, because students can learn better from their fellow students. Whereas the student who is good in his studies feels proud about himself. One, his self-esteem goes up. On the other side, he feels useful for somebody. As a result, he looks at other person in a sympathetic, in a passionate way. So you encourage empathy in the other person, and so his personality gets molded in all these activities. Then encourage active learning. Let them learn. When they commit mistakes, try to give a feedback, help them to improve, give an active role to the student rather than a passive role like giving a notes or giving question answers, etc., and reproducing them. And nothing can be demotivating like a routine mechanical activity. So encourage active learning, provide a wide variety of activities, and give prompt feedback, give immediate feedback. Like when I write a test, there is no point in giving a feedback after 3 months, I would have forgotten. So immediately tell them, yes, good, you have done here well, but here still you need to do better. Give a feedback, but in a feedback, keep one thing in mind. There's a difference between a criticism and a feedback. In criticism, you talk about only the negative and you don't even say what is expected or what is wrong, and then you talk about only negative, you leave it at that. That's even more humiliating for a student. In a feedback, you identify positive. Every student has something positive. Any person has something positive in him or her. Learn to identify the positive, because we are more skilled in looking at the negative in others rather than looking at the positive. So try to develop the habit of looking at the positive in the students. First, present the positive. When you present the positive first, the student becomes receptive to what you say, and then present the negative and tell them why it is negative, what is expected, how he can improve. That will motivate him to do better. So don't be critical, provide a feedback and provide immediate feedback so that the motivation could be developed in the students. Then the next one, emphasize time on task. For every single activity, provide an optimum boundary and tell them that you must adhere to the time. You need not be rigid. You can be slightly flexible, but to a large extent, emphasize that you must confine to the time schedule so that you develop a discipline in the student. So emphasize on time and also explain the importance of time. Then communicate high expectation to the student. Don't be critical. I pretty well, don't say that I pretty well knew that you would fail. Never do that. Well, I thought you would do much better, but you have done this way. So my expectation was different. Have you done it this way? I didn't expect this from you. Then the student will feel guilty and naturally he will correct himself rather than humiliating him. And every classroom, there are a variety of talents and different ways of learning. So respect diverse talents, variety of talents, and variety of ways of learning. Only thing, the common goal is he must learn. How he learns is different. It can be done in different ways. There is nothing wrong. So as a result, respect diversity in a classroom and provide a wide variety of opportunities, and ultimately the young minds can be shaped and they can learn and that can be effective. So don't think that, well, those students who come to learn history are demotivated students or less intelligent students. That is not the case, etc. It is in your hands to motivate the students to learn the subject better, to apply the subject better for the betterment of the society, etc., and contribute to their life also. So it is quite possible, and I'm glad that I have an opportunity to interact with you, and I thank the organizers for the opportunity given. Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
tell me what happened, sir.
Yeah, it's over. So,
Okay, sir. Ma'am, stop sharing, sir.
yes, sir.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Dear participants, you can post your queries through chat box. You can send your question through chat box. Sir, can you see this chat box, sir? Unmute yourself, sir. Sir, unmute yourself, sir. Wait, sir, wait. Sir. Now unmute, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir. Can you see the chat box, sir?
Oh, I am unable to see. Just a minute. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Dear participants, you can post your questions through chat box, sir. So one question, sir, that conflict between students in campus. What is the role of teacher?
See, the conflict is usually, we need to see why the conflict occurs, the reason behind the conflict. If you can specify the issue, I think the answer is better, because see, one conflict that can be students usually expect you to give them high marks, whereas you may be giving lower marks because, well, the students won't. When a student is dissatisfied with what you are doing, ask him to meet you and you give an explanation for him. Try to convince him and explain why you are doing something. Then conflict, rather than justifying yourself, rather than defending yourself, explain the reason as to why you are doing that, and you try to explain, then the conflict can be minimized. See, when a student takes a liberal doesn't mean that you need to be liberal in everything. See, when it comes to certain things, liberality, you should not be liberal. Say, for example, you give a date for a test, and unless there is a valid reason, you should not allow the student to take the test on any other day. So when you know that, well, he deliberately has done that, then you must tell him, I'm not giving you an opportunity. Whereas when a student was sick on a particular day, unavoidable reason, then you can give him the opportunity. So liberal doesn't mean you are liberal with every single student in every single issue. See the objectivity of the issue and then try to be liberal. Say, for example, one example, many of our colleges and universities, mark and the final semester examination mark, there is no correlation at all. Sometimes there can be negative correlation also. Now, what it implies is that the teacher gives marks, more marks to students whom he likes, less marks for students whom he doesn't like. That should not be the case. Likes or dislikes, giving internal marks should be based on his learning over a period of time. And as a result, the reason is when a student has not learned well, give him lower internal marks. So the lower internal mark is only to tell him that you have not performed well here. But at the same time, the internal mark is given here because when a student on the day of the examination, when he is unable to do well due to some reason like illness or something like that, whereas throughout the year he has been learning well and doing his job well, then your internal mark can compensate that. That is why the discretion is given to you. But when you misuse the discretion here, or when you wrongly use the discretion here, students are frustrated with you, more conflict occurs, they see you as an enemy, and as a result, the relationship gets strained. That should not be the case. So
Sir, next question, sir. How can we handle the students' problems or motivate them in online mode teaching? Give some suggestions.
Yes, sir. See, first, not necessarily in online mode teaching, in any teaching, in any classroom, it is your quality of teaching which attract the students. I give you an example of a teacher, a senior colleague of mine who was working in Venkateswara University, Tirupati. And when I went there as an examiner, at that time I was in my late 40s and he was in his mid 50s, such a senior person. And when we were informally chatting in the evening, I asked him, sir, as a teacher, because we were talking about how students behave, etc. And one thing that we agreed was when you are teaching in a classroom, when you give an example, students usually understand the example but miss the point that you are trying to explain. And when it comes to the examination, when the question comes, they write the example for an answer. And when you don't give the mark, they bring the paper and say, sir, the same example I have written, what you gave in the class, I have written, you have not given the marks. Then you tell them you have given the example, but you have not given the explanation. So now it is a feedback for us, the teacher also. When you give an example, the student focuses on the example, misses the point, which means you must focus more on the points and try to elaborate and link it with the example. That's a feedback to the teacher also. And we were chatting like that and asked him, what is the unforgettable experience as a teacher in your class, sir? He said, see, one day when I entered my class at 9 o'clock in the morning, the first hour, when I entered my class, there was one girl sitting in the front bench. She used to be there on the front bench. On that day, I didn't expect her, but she was there on the front bench. And the reason that he didn't expect her that day was, that was her day, marriage day. She was getting married on that day. So naturally, nobody will attend the class. But this girl was there in the front bench as usual. The teacher asked him, how come you are here today? Sir, the Muhurtam is only at about 10:30 and your class is between 9 and 9:45. I do not want to miss your class. That's why I came here. So look at the example here. Even on the marriage day, when the student could have easily avoided, she didn't want to miss the class. So it is in your hands. When you teach any subject matter, make it in an interesting way. When I say an interesting way, what it implies is when you explain a point, you try to relate it with the example from day-to-day life situation, from our personal situation, where the student will be able to relate and understand. So that's where I said, instead of saying history is a day-to-day, remembering of names and dates, that is not the case. In order to make him understand what history is, tell him to make a essay about the name of his village and how the name was given to his village, etc. When he brings the essay, then tell him this is what is called as history. History tells you how something evolved, how something grew. So the society evolves because of some problems at some point of time, and for which people take certain remedial efforts. As a result, some improvement occurs, etc. Only history can tell you that. Make him understand what history is. So try to relate it with your own day-to-day examples, with incidents, with events, etc., rather than bookish examples. That will motivate the students better. The same way, online class also provide interesting examples, interesting pictures, etc., and teach him in such a way that he will be able to follow. And there may be students who may mute the camera and go away. Don't try to identify and punish them. Don't do that. Instead, tell him, I noticed it, but anyway, it is only for your benefit. Leave it at that. Don't try to punish them. So motivating them is in your hands, in making your teaching more interesting. And making it more interesting is by relating with our day-to-day life situations, etc. That way, it is possible to motivate. For that, we need to practice. Say, for example, the same thing happened to me when I was a student in the regular college. One day, the senior professor said, experienced teachers are better teachers, qualitatively better teachers. I argued with him and saying that, no, sir, anybody can be equally a good teacher, because what does a teacher do? I saw it from a student's perspective. A teacher goes to a classroom and explains the subject matter, which means if the teacher has subject knowledge and if the teacher has communication skill, anybody can be a good teacher. I tried to argue. But as I told you, there is a generation gap. This person has an experience which I did not have. So he patted me on the back at a particular point and said, okay, my dear child, you should become a teacher. I should see you. Then ultimately, I joined as a teacher under him. And the first class I had to go in was in the distance education. I was fresh from college. And there were going to be 100 students in the classroom. I had not faced an audience earlier. So I prepared for 3 hours, jotted down the points for 1 hour class. Then when I entered into the class, because many of you would not have seen me, so even now I am puny in my stature, and at least now I have a gray hair. At that time there was no gray hair also. So as I entered into the classroom, I was the youngest person in the class. So no one saw me as a teacher. They did not bother to stand up. They did not bother to stop talking among themselves. So they thought probably I was one of their classmates. Then I went to the days and then I cleaned the board. Then they thought a peon has come to clean the board. The teacher will come later. Then when I wrote the topic on the board, there was disbelief in their eyes. They stopped talking, and then one of them politely asked, "Sir, is this psychology class?" Then I said, "Yes, this is psychology class, and I'm your psychology teacher." Now, see, I had not seen an audience earlier. I had not taught earlier. Whereas now, 100 students who are older than you, more experienced than you, they don't see you as a teacher at all. What my feeling at that time? The stress went to the peak. Then I kept the points on the podium and then I started my lecture. Actually, I had taken the points for 1 hour class, for which I worked for 3 hours to jot down the points. But the points got exhausted in half an hour. So next day I go to the class 10 minutes late, come out 10 minutes early. Then I went to the teacher. The same teacher. Sir, this is the problem. What should I do? He didn't tease me. He didn't make fun of me saying that you argued with me on the other day like that. Though he remembered that he didn't. Like a parent supporting his child, he said, don't worry, you take a point now. You try to explain, then try to give an example, then try to link it with an example, etc. Then I understood now. Now I have the knowledge as to what I should do. I went to the class the next day. I had the examples also. Now, what happens here is, the examples are jokes. The points when I prepared, even I started mentioning, noting down the jokes also. After the third point, this example should come. When I gave the example, there was no reaction in the class. Because what happens is, because there is a lack of experience, I tell the point that is there in my point, and then I tell the example. There is no link between the example and my point. That is where I need to set a priority. Next time I need to improve. That is how you improve based on your experience. There would be inadequacy, but you must be convinced of the inadequacy. You try to improve over that and also get the feedback from the students. Improve yourself over the inadequacies, then you would become a better teacher, and that way you can motivate your own students, which is quite possible. But you need to take effort, and criticism from students, don't get offended. Instead, take it as an opportunity for you to become a better teacher in future. Right now, probably you are not. In future, you can become even a better teacher. So don't get angry when your students are critical. Don't get upset when they are critical, etc. Instead, be happy. Because a student who says, you, sir, your class was great, you are not going to benefit in any way. On the other hand, when a student comes to your class and say, sir, you are talking for 1 full hour, you are giving so much points, but you are too fast where I am unable to understand anything at all. Then he tells you a point where you are going to become a better teacher. That is what needs to be encouraged. Not only encouraged, you must take effort. Like when you take the effort and the student say that his feedback is being taken seriously, he will keep giving you feedback. As a result, you can become a better teacher in the long run, and that way you will be able to motivate your students also. So never get offended when your students try to criticize you, try to corner you, etc. Try to see them as opportunities to overcome your inadequacy so that you would become a better teacher. Thank you.
Sir, one more question, sir. What should we do when a student tries to take advantage of our liberality?
Well, when a student takes advantage of your liberality, don't get angry. It is human nature to take advantage when he has an easier way of doing that. Don't get angry, don't shout at him, etc. At the same time, with a smile, be firm. Say, for example, when the student says, sir, I have not written I am unable to submit the assignment today, then don't say yes. Because when you say yes, what will happen is today your student will say, well, this teacher is a nice person. But he will go out and tell all his friends, juniors, etc., saying that, well, you can cheat this fellow quite easily. As a result, when he gives you an assignment, you need not write. You go and tell him that you are unable to. He will allow you. He will not respect you as a teacher. On the other hand, firmly call him and talk to him. Why he has not done that? Try to find out the reason. In a friendly way, try to find out the reason and tell him, no, this is not the way to do that. I'm going to give you reduce the marks for you because you have not submitted the assignment on time, whereas somebody else has submitted the assignment on time. So for that, I'm giving him more marks. Tell them that show that you are impartial. That is very important. Show that you are impartial and you mean what you say. You can smile at the same time. You can be firm also. That way, you will be able to stop this type of wrong action among the students. Yes, it is possible, but be consistent. That's important.
Okay, so next question, sir.
Yes, sir.
Whether is it necessary to say always positive, criticizing by scolding or menting in a harsh way is right or wrong? In my opinion, is it the part of correcting the students?
Yes, to a certain extent, I agree with you. But it is not day in and day out for every action. When you scold the student, well, the student will develop an anger toward you. That is when the student thinks that my teacher does not understand me and shouts at me, insults me, etc. Never do that. Scolding can be in an extreme situation when, whether it is your own child or whether it is your student, when you have to scold the child, indicate that you are so unhappy about him, though I feel that you are capable of doing it well, you are not doing well, I keep telling you I'm there to help you, you are not doing that well. When there is something to be important immediately to be done, you can scold him. Otherwise, in the long run, don't do it very frequently. Never do that. You be tolerant, and occasionally when you get angry, your anger will have its own value. When you become angry every other day, well, it will not go into the student at all. It will not have value. It will only lead to a negative attitude toward you, and he will not have respect for you. So scolding can be in an extreme situation. It can be done to show your unhappiness, and which can have its own effect on the student. Not every day. No.
Sir, the students are taking advantages when you are a woman teacher. Some students try to pull you. How to handle it, sir?
See, again, I told you the first thing is the students are in the adolescent stage. So the peer group, because will make fun of you, because most of the teachers may be males, you only may be a female, one. Number two, probably you may be a young person. So as a result, students who are at the adolescent stage or the youth stage, they will be attracted toward the opposite gender. It's quite a natural process. But for that, don't get angry and shout at the student. On the other hand, try to tell them and talk to them that, well, I'm like your parent or I'm like your sister, I'm here to teach, etc. When you try to politely do that, when you become more friendly, well, all these behaviors will stop. These pranks will take place only when you shout at them, when you become angry, when you try to drive them away from you. Only then when it will happen. When you are friendly and deal with it in a friendly way, well, in the long run, they will be able to see you as a friend, not in a different angle. And as a result, this behavior could be stopped. And not only you are stopping this behavior now, you are helping the student to understand and become a better person throughout his life, which he will realize at a later stage also. So that way, look at the long-term consequences. Don't look at the immediate consequences and act on that. That's important.
Sir, please give the details of the effective books, names, and journals, sir. Updated new researches, ideas, and techniques.
So the journals, I would say, most of them are academic, which may not be helpful for you. On the other hand, what I would suggest is you go to the internet. Say, for example, how to develop empathy. When you say that in internet, there are guidelines given to you for the development of a particular characteristic, etc. And examples also would be given. So there may be 10 essays. One particular essay may give you an example which is relevant for you rather than the other essays. So from that, you can take the points you can develop. Journals are more academic. They may not be able to help. They will give you more of statistics and statistical interpretation rather than practical application. So that may not be of much help for you.
In what ways we can motivate or tackle the students' problems in online mode teaching?
Pardon, can you please repeat the question?
In what ways we can motivate or tackle the students' problem in online mode of teaching?
Right. Because the student problem in online I feel may be different from the regular college. Because online teaching, I'm new for that. This is only just like most of us, it's a new experience for us. So we need to see what is the type of problem that is there online. But all these things can be done in a friendly way. At the same time, advising the students, monitoring. You must monitor the student also. Tell him that last time itself I told you are repeating, but please don't repeat that. And try to advise him and try to explain the consequence rather than making him angry, rather than offending him, etc. Try to do that. Or if possible, instead of giving the lecture, advice online, allow him now later on, call him personally over phone and then talk to him, and that may be able to deal with the situation. Yeah.
This is the last question, sir. What is the solution to solve the psychological problems of the history students hailed from non-history subject at government college level?
See, the government college level, background, there are many aspects which may contribute to that. See, one is they are from uneducated families, number one. Number two, they are not exposed much to this technology and other things. Number three, with regard to English conversation, they are not really good in that, so they may have difficulty in understanding English also. And number four, they may have their own inferiority complexes, etc. So these types of problems may be there. And if it is there, you need to encourage them. There are two things, two ways in which you can do that. Number one, try to tell them, identify the problem and tell them how they can overcome. Like, for example, what happened was, I grew up in a very remote village. So, and I studied in Tamil medium up to my school finals. So during that time, when someone who comes home speak in English, I try to run away from them because I used to feel shy. That was the situation. Then subsequently, when I went to college, it was in English medium, I had difficulty. But at the same time, what happened was, well, my family members, some of my friends or teachers advised me to read books on English, not necessarily textbooks, say for example, novels, etc., which will help you with regard to your spoken English, etc. So that way I could develop myself. So tell them what they can do to develop an appropriate way. Don't tell them take a grammar book and then learn the grammar. That's not going to help him in spoken English. That's not the case. So help him, be sympathetic with them, be friendly with them, don't be critical. Tell them, I'm also from such a background. So it is possible if you put in the effort. So read a book, or if possible, if you have a book, when you meet them next time, give them a book and then keep asking them how much you have learned, what is it that you understood, and then how they can learn. When you come across a new word, note down the word and go to the dictionary and then find out the meaning of the word, etc. So that way, in a friendly way, try to encourage them to learn. The important thing is focus on the inadequacy and see to it that they take effort to overcome the inadequacy. Don't try to give them any concession to overcome the inadequacy. Tell them what is an appropriate way to overcome and develop, and tell them it is not unusual. The same thing happened to me, I could do that. And don't quote yourself as an example for everything. One. Don't quote Abdul Kalam as an example for everything. Then the student would think that Abdul Kalam is an extraordinary person. I am not extraordinary. That is not the case. Show examples from around the student each time. One can be your own example, the other one can be another student's example, the third one can be an example from some other department, etc. When you put that, the student will realize that, yes, I can also apply and benefit out of that. They will be able to do that. The main thing is, number one, be friendly. Don't make fun of him for his inadequacy. Number two, identify the issue and find out the solution for the issue and make him take effort. You don't do things for him. Make him take efforts to overcome the inadequacy. Certainly, rural students, with your support, it is easier to deal with them rather than students from the urban areas. So only thing, you should be empathetic, you should be understanding, you must be friendly. With that approach, it is possible to happen. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
We are at the final stage of the session. We are not inclined to wind up the session, but we have been forced to wind up because of the time. I am really thankful to Professor Suresh, formerly Professor and Head Department of Psychology, Annamalai University, and presently Course Director, Care Institute of Behavioral Sciences, Chennai, and Honorary Professor, Department of Psychology, Annamalai University. Our professor has insisted that we teachers, apart from providing knowledge, we have to have some skill on how to manage the young minds. Professor has also shared his experiences in a way to enlighten us, the teachers. On behalf of the organizing committee, I thank Professor Suresh for his excellent and elaborate presentation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. I thank all the participants also.
Apart from that, I also thank the participants for their readiness to be acquainted with more knowledge on the theme, particularly how to manage the young talents. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.